Welcome back, guys, to another episode of the NFL Universe. Yes, we have an official name now. We discussed it in our text group chat this week, so we officially are the NFL Universe again. Welcome back. I'm here with my co-host, Max.
What's up, everybody?
And without further ado, we're going to head right into the games this week. No time to waste. First game of the week was, unfortunately, the Giants versus Washington. And this, oh, my God. Washington wins this one 30-29, moves Washington to 1-1. Giants now fall to 0-2. We'll go to the stats first. That's how we usually do things here. Daniel Jones, 249 yards, 1 touchdown. Also rushed for a touchdown, had 95 yards on the ground. Saquon Barkley held to another 57-yard game. I think he had like 30-something the previous week on 13 carries. We'll get into that in a second. Sterling Shepard, 94 yards receiving. We had Darius Slayton with 54 yards receiving and a touchdown. Kenny Golladay, pretty abysmal again with 38 yards receiving. And then defensively, nothing special to talk about there. The only guy I can really talk about, only person that gives me hope on this defense is Ojulari. I'm still trying to get his name down.
Azeez Ojulari, yep.
And he is now back-to-back weeks with the sack, and I think that's on par for record. I can't remember, but he's one of the better rookies in the NFL right now as a result of having back-to-back weeks with sacks. So it gives me some hope that we have a pass rusher possibly in the future for the Giants. On the Washington side of things, Tyler Heineke, I always stick with his name too. 336 yards, 2 touchdowns, 1 reception. Gibson, 69 yards rushing. McKissick with a rushing touchdown. And then receiving, Terry McLaurin doing what he does, 107 yards, 1 touchdown. Going on to this game, pretty much back and forth battle throughout the – but, the Giants really should have had this one. Giants had multiple opportunities to win this game. Between the defense could not tackle, per usual. We had like 15-something – we had some ridiculous amount of penalties I can't think off the top of my head. Our offensive line can't block. Our receivers drop balls. I think we had Darius Slayton, who had nearly a wide open reception in the end zone. He drops that ball. It's just so many mistakes. And my issue is with the Giants. One of my bigger ones is, our coach, right? My blank on his name right now. Why am I? Joe Judge. I can't think. Thank you. Hello, Joe Judge. He emphasizes on being disciplined and doing the right things on special teams and not getting penalties. And this team is just full of that. Doing the simple things right, like being able to tackle. We miss I don't know how many tackles. Not getting penalties. We get so many penalties. And then on top of that, we have the lack of talent. We have Jason Garrett, who is a lackluster offensive coordinator. Not horrible, but is not doing anything special for this team. And then going over to Saquon Barkley, he does not look like the same player right now. He does not have the same ability that he did. I think hopefully as the weeks progress, he'll get back to that point. Maybe it's really hard to say where he's at exactly in his injury progress because obviously the NFL teams don't want that type of information out to just anybody. Only what you get in the media, which we know is the media is always not 100% true, especially with injury reports. We don't know where a guy's at. Hopefully he gets back to health. It's rough as a Giants fan, can I say? And then going over to Washington, not to hold you guys for too long. They're a pretty solid team. Heineke, I think, can step in. First of all, this defense is really spectacular. It's something special. Chase Young is Chase Young, and he's looking like he's going to be that guy in the NFL for quite some time. He's going to be that elite pass rusher that everyone knows his name, if he's not there already. And that defense is pretty solid. Offensively, Terry McLaurin's really special wide receiver. Made multiple huge plays for them. Just looking at this from a more general standpoint, I see Washington and Cowboys fighting it out to win the division this year. Giants, hopefully at this point, you're going to follow the tank season. We can get Spencer Rattler, some good quarterback. But I see, going to the game this week, we're going to have Washington versus Cowboys. I think it's really going to help determine who's going to take the NFC East this year. Max?
You're also forgetting the very important play at the end of the game where the football team missed the field goal and it was offside.
Dexter Lawrence. That's what I'm saying. The penalties. Dexter Lawrence. They missed the field goals. Dexter. And not only is Dexter Lawrence offside. Look at me when I say this. Not only was Dexter Lawrence offside, but he's over the linebackers. He's over the long snapper. You see the ball. There's no reason to even be in the neutral zone. There's no reason to jump it. You can see the ball. You're right over the ball. How are we offsides?
It's just this team. I just can't so. It's crazy to think that Daniel Jones actually didn't have a bad game. He looked pretty decent except for one horrific overthrow. Yeah. And the one to Slayton, you could say, was a little overthrown too.
Slayton's going to catch that.
But it's just everything else. And Nick, you know this. I'm sure Giants fans can speak to this. Getting a new quarterback is not going to save this organization.
It's true.
And no area is this more apparent than the offensive line? In 2017, we were talking about this last week. Dave Gettleman says the offensive line sucks. We got to fix it. It's 2021. Where is it? Like, how do you? That's like the first thing you should fix for your offense. Because at Super Bowl 55, was it 55 that just happened this year? Yeah. I'm blanking on it. Yeah. I believe it was 55. Showed us that the quarterback's best weapon is the offensive line. And for supposedly an offensive line connoisseur that Dave Gettleman at least thinks he is or should be, where are the results? It's not happening. This organization is just finding ways to lose games in multiple ways. And I mean, there's a reason they haven't had a winning record since 2016.
The only team that has not got, I believe the Giants are the only team.
That's absolutely correct.
I saw a statistic this week. The Giants are the only team since 2017 that have not had a positive record at some point throughout the season. That's horrible.
What else is there to say? And as for Washington, though, I mean, they might have been close, but it's a rivalry game. You can expect it to be pretty close. And I'm with you. I definitely think they're going to run the table in the NFC East along with the Cowboys. I still am holding on to my prediction they're going to win it because I trust their defense and coaching above the Cowboys. But it's going to be close. I think it'll be another one of those. Hopefully, it'll be down to week 17 again, or week 18, I should say, because for a bad division, you at least want it to be a tight race, and that's what happened last year. So hopefully, it happens again this year.
Yeah, and man, I keep going on and on about it. It's just, oh my God, it's so painful as a Giants fan. Moving on from there, we have the Raiders and Steelers. Raiders take this one 26-17. Raiders move to 2-0. Steelers move to 1-1. Derek Carr, 382 yards, 2 touchdowns. Barber with 32 yards rushing, and obviously we're still without Josh Jacobs. I believe he's returning for week 3. I saw a report.
It wasn't that bad of an injury, so it
yeah. So I think he's returning for week 3. That obviously did not play this past week. Henry Ruggs, another solid game here, 113 yards and a touchdown. Darren Waller held to 65 yards here receiving. And then going over to the Steelers side of things, Roethlisberger, 295 yards, 1 touchdown, 1 interception. Najee Harris, 38 yards. Juju Smith-Schuster rushed for a touchdown. And then we had Deontay Johnson as their leading receiver with 105 yards, no touchdowns. And Najee Harris had 43 yards rushing and receiving and 1 touchdown receiving. Going into this game, I guess I'll start with the Raiders. I think I'm bought into the Raiders at this point. I think the Raiders have established themselves as a playoff team at this point, simply because look at the people that they beat. Derek Carr is playing the best he's played since 2016. He is having a near MVP caliber season. I don't think he's going to win MVP. He's probably going to fall off a little bit towards later in the season because he's just not that consistent of a quarterback. But he's playing out of his mind right now in terms of Derek Carr, and he's winning them football games. That Raiders defense is playing out of their minds for what the talent that they have. This Raiders team is legit. I see them as a playoff team. There's no doubt about it. Me and Wax were talking about it, and I did it. I went and dropped Jameis Winston. I know I was on his hype train. I totally take that back 1 week later, but we'll get into that.
I told you guys what happened.
Right.
I told you guys last week this would happen.
Max was 100% right. But just going off of that, I went and picked up Derek Carr. I think Derek Carr is going to be pretty solid moving forward. And I believe in this Raiders team to make the playoffs. Henry Ruggs is developing into that player that I thought he would be. I think guys like Henry Ruggs, Jalen Waddle are all somewhat models of Tyreek Hill, and I believe they're going to be the status quo for receivers that every team needs if they're going to be an elite team. With that being said, they are so elite because of their speed to get over the top. It pushes back defense, it stretches defense out. Their safety's got to play back deeper. You can have guys that are maybe slower, better route runners, better receivers over the middle. It opens up a lot for that offense. And I think players like Henry Ruggs, again, Tyreek Hill, are going to provide a lot of versatility to offenses going into the future. I think they're going to be a staple, a standard for NFL offenses. Every team's going to want one of those guys. I'm not saying it hasn't in the past, right? Speedy guys are always wanted on an NFL team. I just think that they're going to somewhat become a crutch with how the NFL is developing for an elite squad, partially. And then going over to the Steelers side of things, they're kind of held back by quarterback play. Ben Roethlisberger is not great. I think the Steelers, we saw the real Steelers this week. They're probably not going to be a playoff team. They might be if Mike Tomlin can really coach it together. But I think they're held back by Ben Roethlisberger. And I saw a quote, or I forget who it was, by Stephen A. Smith. And I guess before I finish, I'll ask you, do the Steelers go for Cam Newton and sign him? Because honestly,
no, that's not going to make him any better.
I agree. So Stephen A. Smith brought it upon the point where it was like, oh, it gives them more mobility. And honestly, I might see Cam Newton as an upgrade over Ben Roethlisberger. I don't know, because Ben Roethlisberger, without a doubt, even at this age, is probably still a better passer.
They're not gonna
100% a better decision maker, but he does give them more mobility in terms of they're going to run a lot of short game from here on out.
Now it's like he can run sort of fast, but he can't throw that well either. It's like, what are you really getting out of it?
I just thought it was an interesting topic to bring up. What do you guys think? Leave it in the comments below. Cam Newton to the Steelers. Do you agree with Stephen A. Smith?
I'll laugh if that happens.
Because I questioned it, and I was like, I kind of see his point with the mobility thing, but I don't know if he's the right fit for the team, especially with the team that doesn't need extra drama in the locker room, i.e., Le'Veon Bell, Antonio Brown. So bringing a Cam Newton doesn't seem to really mix in well with that.
I don't worry about the drama there, but what are you upgrading? Like,
that's true. That's another. It's not above everything else. Above everything else is talent, and I don't think Cam Newton adds anything. He only somewhat detracts in terms of his outlandish comments and things that he brings to the table. In terms of his interesting character to follow, but his talent really on a level for the Steelers. I'm moving on from there. Najee Harris, I want to talk about a little bit. They should not have gone for a court running back in the first round, but Najee Harris, I think, is probably one of the better running backs in the NFL moving forward. He just has the size and his strength and his agility, I think. Not exactly, he doesn't have top end speed, but his agility and his size is able to power and make himself available in the receiving game with 43 yards and a touchdown. He's special, and I think he's basically going to be the replacement for Le'Veon Bell. That being said, I think the Steelers, they have good weapons, but their offensive line is not where it was, and Ben Roethlisberger not where it was. Because you look at Deontay Johnson, solid receiver, Claypool, solid receiver, Juju Smith-Schuster, solid receiver. They have a good receiver core. They have a good running back, Najee Harris. So it really comes down to their offensive line and their quarterback play. If you look at their defense, they're probably top 3 defense in the NFL behind TJ Watt. So
this weekend.
That's true. I just really think this falls upon their offensive line for Roethlisberger, Max.
Yeah, I definitely think the Steelers showed more of their true colors this week, and I told you guys in the past 2 weeks, maybe not the past 2 weeks, but last 2 episodes, I said, the Steelers were going to go in there and beat Buffalo because they weren't expected to at all. Coming back home against a team that nobody respects, the Raiders were 6-point underdogs. This was the perfect game for the Steelers to lose, and sure enough, their offense went back to being flat. They couldn't overcome their injuries. And touching on Najee Harris, I mean, great player, obviously. The talent is there, but I was looking at a number of the runs he made on Sunday, and he had no holes to run through. The line is just not good there. And Roethlisberger, for a lot of the game, was forcing balls into areas where he really had no business throwing. And yeah, I definitely, like I said, this Steelers team is not going to go very far with what they have. Maybe they'll make the playoffs because I could see them winning a bunch of games they're not supposed to, or being close at least. Yeah, like pretty much, though, everything I thought about them is the same. I still wouldn't predict them to make the playoffs. As far as the Raiders go, I'm not going to say I'm sold on them yet, because we've seen in the past few years, they're so inconsistent, especially late in the year. Especially last year, December was when they really start to fall apart. They went and beat the Chiefs last year in Kansas City in October. They nearly lost to the Jets in December. Like, how does that happen? I mean, very true. I love Derek Carr personally. I think he's extremely underrated. But as far as the team goes, I think the end of the year is their true test, because we know what they can be. What are they going to be? Are they going to gain consistency? Because that could make a difference between no playoffs and playoffs.
Very true. And that I didn't expect them definitely to be one of the last undefeated teams in the NFL, to say the least. But at the end of the day, it's consistency. That's always been their problem. But I personally do see a difference in them this time around. I think they got a shot at the playoffs. It could be like a 10-7 team. Moving on from there, we have the 49ers and the Eagles. 49ers take this one 17-11. 49ers move to 2-0. Eagles move to 1-1. Going through the stats real quick, Garoppolo, 189 yards and a touchdown. Mitchell, 42 yards rushing on 17 carries. Hasty with 5 carries, 38 yards. And then receiver-wise, Deebo Samuel with 93 yards on 6 receptions. And then George Kittle only had 17 yards on 4 receptions. We'll note that. I'm going to go back to that in a second. Jalen Hurts, 190 yards, no touchdowns, no receptions. Jalen Hurts also had 82 yards rushing and a touchdown. In the receiving wise, you had Watkins with 117 yards, no touchdowns. And that was the highlight of the receiving core right there. So going through it real quick, I'll start with the 49ers. One thing to note is Hasty went down with injury. It's going to move Trey Sermon up in the ladder for running back, rather. And I think Trey Sermon's probably going to, not yet. I know they're still going to start Mitchell at number 1 because he had a good week. He had a really good week 1. He performed pretty not as good in the second week. Only had 42 yards on 17 rushes. I expect him to slowly go over to Trey Sermon as their top running back. So keep an eye on that in terms of fantasy. It's also, if you're a 49ers fan, I think they're going to have that slow switch over. Most is out for the year. Hasty went down with the injury. Mitchell is not performing to where he was at least week one. There's a lot of hype around Trey Sermon. So I would be definitely look out for that. Deebo Samuel, I think, has kind of established himself as wide receiver one for the 49ers. Not only that, but he's also having a sort of a breakout year so far. Week 1 and week 2 has looked very solid. Is breaking into that elite receiver category this year, and definitely continue to look for that. And given he is Jimmy Garoppolo throwing to him and not Trey Lance, will eventually step in. He'll probably be a better quarterback. So that's interesting. It's going to be an interesting combo there as we see Deebo Samuel develop. And then thirdly, George Kittle, second week in a row now where he's been pretty much a non-factor in the games. 49ers have, really we know the 49ers like to run the ball really heavily. You can see that in the carries versus the receptions and look at their plays. But usually they'll get George Kittle involved, and he really just has been mostly a blocker this season. And it's been 2 games now where George Kittle has been really limited on numbers. If you're a fantasy owner, might be concerned about that. I don't really know what to do at this point because, again, they had another running back drop. Are they going to start passing more? Because Deebo Samuel's been successful. We know George Kittle's a good receiver. It's just whether they're going to throw him the ball or not. So maybe they go towards passing a little bit more. But, I'd continue to follow. If I was a fantasy owner with George Kittle, just keep looking it over because he's not done great so far. And if they're going to continue to run this ball this heavy, he's good trade value. Somebody will want him, and you probably dump him, now, sooner than later, especially if they're going to run the ball this heavily this entire season, which we know the 49ers love to run the ball. Moving to the Eagles side of things, we told you not to get into the Jalen Hurts hype, and you definitely shouldn't now. Not that he did terrible, but again, he's just not that game-breaking of a quarterback at least yet. It's only his second year, so you got to give him time, but not bad, but he's not doing anything too special. 82 yards in the ground, 1 touchdown. Daniel Jones has that. I think Daniel Jones has less of a running ability than Jalen Hurts does. At the end of the day, your franchise quarterback has got to be able to throw the football and really change games through the air. Jalen Hurts can run the ball, but going for that, their wide receiver core is also with the Eagles not looking great. Defense was looking pretty solid. I give them that. But wide receiver core, where are we? Smith was 15 yards. You have Gainwell with 18 yards. You have Rager with 5 yards. It's just very unsuccessful. And this really comes out of the fact that the 49ers have a really solid defense. Their defense played out of their minds, especially with the fact that they just lost Verrett, in the secondary position. So, they're doing all right for what they have right now. The 49ers team, they look pretty good. They could be a playoff team if they continue to play the way they are. But I don't know. What do you think, Max? Before I ramble on.
I think I didn't watch this game very closely, so I can't speak to it too much. But just looking at the score, like in the scores of their games, week 1, they got carried on their offense. This week was their defense, not a lot of offense. And for George Kittle's struggles, is it now? I assume when you're talking, you probably watched the game. Was it because you don't think they're targeting him enough, or what?
They're not really targeting him a lot.
So why wouldn't you? Like your running backs, they can run by committee because that's because their offensive line is good. Mm-hmm. But why, if your Kittle's in your offense, why you're not targeting him? Like he should be the centerpiece of that offense because how dominant he is. So I think if that's what the issue is, then that's a huge mistake by Kyle Shanahan, not utilizing your assets to your advantage. So, in fairness, the 2 years ago when they made the Super Bowl, they were fairly iffy early in the year, and they were sort of inconsistent all regular season. So we'll see how it goes in the playoffs, assuming they make it there. They are still healthy, which is what matters at this point, because that's the biggest thing. That's the question for them has always been, can they stay healthy? So I'm still waiting to see more from this team, this 49ers team, for sure. The first 2 weeks have not showed us enough, especially based off what their previous years have showed us. And I think we were, like you said, with the Eagles, I agree with. You couldn't get too high on the Jalen Hurts hype train, there. And they played a really bad team in week 1, and we had a feeling they would come back down to earth. So you never know. Hurts could still improve. He could get there. Do I think he will? Not really, but you still got to give him time. But for those of you acting like he was going to be a great quarterback this year, let's calm down on the expectations there. Not that many people did, but just from the way some people were talking up to week 1, there was a little bit of an overreaction.
So moving on from there, we have the Browns and Texans. Not much to talk about this game. Browns win at 31-21. Browns moved to 1-1. Texans moved to 1-1. Texans, I'm not even going to go through the stats because I honestly could care less. The Texans are bad. Brandon Cook, 78 yards and a touchdown. Tyrod Taylor goes down with an injury. Davis Mills moves up as the starting quarterback. And then the Brown side of things, I think there's a little bit more to talk about here. Baker Mayfield, 213 yards, 1 touchdown, 1 interception. Nick Chubb, 95 yards rushing, 1 touchdown rushing. And then you have Kareem Hunt with 51 yards rushing. And then you have Baker Mayfield also with a rushing touchdown. Fulton is the number 1 receiver for this week, 51 yards and a touchdown. Bryant, 49 yards. And then Hooper, 40 yards. Higgins, 27 yards. And Njoku, 27 yards. And I'm saying this for a reason. Peoples Jones with 14 yards. And then Jarvis Landry with 9 yards. That's the name we're trying to get to there. And then defensively, didn't do anything spectacular either. Ultimately, Grant Delpit had a sack for them. A little concerned with the Browns here. I think they could have done a lot better against this Texans team. But I'm not worried. They won the game by 10 points. It is what it is. Move on from here. They'll start to build momentum. The Browns should be a top 3 team in the NFL this year. And I think if they're going to be that, they got to do better than they did against the Texans, because a team like the Chiefs would absolutely crush the Texans, right? In comparison, most likely. So that's where I'm really basing it off of. So I think Browns have momentum to build it on. And then with the Texans, Davis Mills is now the starting quarterback. And I saw this thing on TikTok, which I guess I'll ask Max, as well as the audience. That's the comments down below. It's this little theory that happens that every single time Tyrod Taylor goes to a team that leaves, they find their franchise quarterback right after. So you have the Bills with Josh Allen. You have the Chargers with Justin Herbert. There's one more team on there that I can't think of right now.
The Browns with Baker.
There you go. Thank you.
Yeah.
So is Davis Mills the next franchise quarterback for the Houston Texans? I 100% doubt it.
Because they're in the NFC South.
Yeah. So I'd probably see them draft and trade Sean Watson and then draft at some point. Probably is going to happen. Davis Mills is not that special, but just an interesting thing to note. Do you guys have any comments about this?
The only difference is all the other guys you listed. You said Herbert, Josh Allen, and Baker. They were all top 10 picks in the first round.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Davis Mills was a 3rd rounder. So, You know what I honestly see this season for the Texans being like the way it started so far? It reminds me of the Jaguars last year. They come out week 1, win in surprising fashion. Not that the Texans were supposed to lose week 1 necessarily, but they weren't supposed to blow out the Jags. Coming in week 2. So the Jags come in week 2 last year, play the Titans closer than people would think. This year, the Texans come in and play the Browns closer than people think. Now they're 1-1. And then the Jaguars lose the rest of their games. The Texans might have lost a good bit of momentum with Taylor going down. So could they do what the Jags did last year and lose all remaining games on their schedule?
And with that being said, we'll move on here. With the Texans being competitive in this game and then winning their first game, obviously, the impact that I do think this has is, presumably they got 1-15. They continue to lose games like they did against the Browns. Relatively close scores. It buys Khalid more time. He'll get an extra year. He'll get an extra 2 years if he continues to coach somewhat well. They're not really expected to win games, but if you can coach them into close losses, get a really good draft pick, rebuild the team, it buys him more time. That's all I can really say about that type of game. Moving on from there, we have the Broncos Jaguars. Broncos win this one 23-13. Broncos are now 2-0. Who would have thought? Jaguars fall to 0-2. Teddy Bridgewater, 328 yards, 2 touchdowns. We have Williams with 64 yards rushing, and then Gordon with 31 yards rushing. Sutton is their top receiver with 159 yards. And that's all I really have to say there. KJ Hamler held to 5 yards. Defensively, Trevor Lawrence did what he did. Kareem Jackson with interception there. And then Jaguars, we have Trevor Lawrence with 2 interceptions, total 118 yards, only passing 1 touchdown as well for Trevor Lawrence. And then rushing-wise, we have Robinson held to 11 carries, 47 yards, receiving 55 yards, and a touchdown for Jones. So just going through this game real quick, I don't think there's much to talk about here as well. Broncos are really playing well right now, to say the least. They are on a hot streak. They're this team that they're going to be the team to beat moving forward. They're going to be, I'd say they're like the Raiders right now. The Broncos and the Raiders are really hot. It's hard to say where they're going to end at the end of the season because it doesn't seem like they really have the talent to carry themselves to a championship, AFC championship, NFC championship, even though they're both AFC, but both AFC championships, you know what I mean? So I don't know really have the talent to go there, but it seems like they're probably the 2 hottest teams in the NFL right now in terms of don't exactly have the talent or the coaching, but they're playing well, they're meshing, and they're going to be a team to beat moving forward. On the Jaguar side of things, they're an absolute mess. Not much to say other than I think this Urban Meyer quote that kind of got leaked. I'm not sure if he said it publicly or I saw the quote. I can't say if it leaked or he said publicly, but he said, but coaching in the NFL is like playing Alabama every single week.
I remember that, yes.
And that just sounds like a coach who's not confident in his ability to coach. Urban Meyer has selectively now gone back to running Carlos Hyde more, which the guy shouldn't even be in the NFL at this point. He's third string running back for a reason. It seems like James Robinson is slowly getting pushed off this team, especially by Urban Meyer.
Why?
Because Urban Meyer, Urban Meyer feels uncomfortable. So he's going to go for the college guys that he knows. I think that's why he's going to Carlos Hyde. That's why he's going to go to. That's why Etienne was drafted.
So
Etienne was drafted. That's why, you know what I mean. So that's why they got rid of.
How many? Do you know how many touches James Robinson has gotten in the past 2 games?
Well, he got 11 carries this week, and I believe he didn't get many more last week. Yeah. And remember, James Robinson was a top 5 in rushing last year in the NFL.
Yeah. And
he was very productive. 11 carries for 47 yards, not horrible. I forget what running back is we just covered. He had 18 yards for 18 carries rather. I think it might have been Mitchell, but like 18 carries for 42 yards. So that's not horrible. It's a little under 4 yards a carry, but if you get 4 yards a carry, that's the first down every single drive. It's not horrible. It's been worse.
You got a first down within 3 plays. And
you
carry it 4 times.
It's not horrible.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. It's not horrible. So sorry, it's a little bit over 4 yards a carry. I can't do math. 44 divided by 11 before. So, they're moving off of James Robinson. Urban Meyer does not seem like he's very confident. I just don't see Urban Meyer lasting more than this. He continues to play like this, and he continues to have that level of confidence. And we know this organization's a mess. We know the players aren't confident in Urban Meyer. If Urban Meyer himself doesn't sound confident, then why are they going to keep him? He's going to be out the door before you know it.
Well, the question I have is he even going to make it halfway through the year at this rate?
Yeah,
it just what can we even say? Every week with this team, it's always a new Urban Meyer rumor coming out. Not playing James Robinson as much as they rather refusing to give him more touches is inexcusable after what he did last year.
Yeah,
and just going back to the ETN pick, it's what I've been saying about them. It's nothing but with this organization. It seems like it's nothing but name chasing. Mm-hmm. Like, especially in the offense, getting a guy like Etienne and not replacing anyone on the offensive line. Look at what Trevor Lawrence is doing. He's going to get killed. You're going to give him the Joe Burrow treatment at this rate. Mm-hmm. What are you doing? How do you – I don't get it. This team is so backwards right now. And it's honestly hard to comment really on anything on the field except for the really bad decision-making, which we touched on, obviously. Man, I just don't get it at all. I can tell you right now, just from a fan watching on TV, I can tell you right now, if it was my team, I'd be giving James Robinson at least 20 touches a game.
100%, I agree with you. Who knows where his career is going to end up at this point? I don't think he's going to last too much longer.
Maybe right now, at least take some of the pressure off Trevor.
Yeah, 100%. Moving on from there, we have the Panthers and the Saints. Panthers destroyed the Saints 27-6. Jameis Winston, 111 yards and 2 picks. So, Max is right. 19 yards rushing for Jameis Winston and a touchdown. Alvin Kamara, 5 yards rushing. Alvin Kamara, 5 yards rushing. Alvin Kamara, 25 yards receiving. Alvin Kamara, 25 yards receiving. Humphrey was their best receiver at 27 yards. All I can say is this. Do I think the Saints week 1 was a fluke? Yes. However, to defend the Saints, the Saints were not able to return home because the city's been kind of destroyed due to flooding, and they're not even at their home stadium right now. So they're kind of a mess. And that's kind of the only excuse that's behind them out of this week. But I've lost faith in the Saints at this point, getting beat this bad by the Panthers. With that being said, Sam Darnold, 305 yards, 2 touchdowns, 1 interception. It was the Jets. Jets were the problem. I think me and Max are kind of on the same page.
And we'll talk about that in a little bit.
Christian McCaffrey, 72 yards and a rushing and a touchdown. Also 65 yards receiving for Christian McCaffrey. He's back. DJ Moore, 79 yards receiving and a touchdown. And then overall, this Panthers defense has been spectacular through 2 games. Statistically, they are the number 1 defense in the NFL right now. And Burris, great interception by him. Burns he's been fantastic. This is his second year, I believe, or third year? I can't remember.
No, this is third.
This third year, yes. Burns has really developed into quite the pass rusher. He had a sack. Sack and a half for Reddick. Half a sack for Fox. this defense they get pressures. It also an interception for Horn as well. This defense, they get pressures. They've been fantastic in the first two games. Sam Darnold is looking great. He's looking like the quarterback he should have been with the Jets, but it's obvious when we get to the Jets that it is the Jets. Jets are probably the problem. Sam Darnold, who's to say whether he's going to be this elite quarterback that he should have been coming out of college, but he's definitely going to be better looking forward. Projecting what we've seen so far, he's going to be a lot better than he was in the Jets. Max?
Yeah, no, definitely. The one thing I will say about Sam Darnold is there was one throw he made. I don't know if it was intercepted or not, but it was like he definitely forced it and he was being tackled. And that's one of those things he'll just have to clean up. And I think he will. I feel like we can sort of forgive him because it's almost like this is I won't compare this to a rookie year, but this is really the first year he's getting an opportunity on a good team and getting the opportunity to develop. So hopefully he'll learn that, and I think he will. But I would say the one thing I will say to defend the Saints that the Panthers defense is that good. Top to bottom, talent-wise, they're absolutely stacked. And it's not surprising that they're one of the top units in the NFL. And I believe I said in the season preview, I definitely see this team flying under the radar because offensively, I really do think that they're about a quarterback away from being a pretty good team. And if Sam Darnold can only progress from here, they may have that. Watch out for this Panthers team, especially in a 7-team playoff. They could make it.
And I love
a little bit. I mean, I've said it already. I thought this would happen because Jameis Winston, as great as he played week 1, he was never going to play like that 16 times a year. Mm-hmm. Not just because of his turnovers, but because that offense has little talent outside of Kamara, who's not even playing that well. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, that's really all I have to say there.
I love Matt Rule's coaching. I think he's a fantastic coach. I was really excited for him to get behind this Panthers team, and it seems like it's panning out so far. I didn't expect the Panthers to rebuild and really get going this early on, but they may be there. Moving on, we had the Rams and the Colts. Rams win at 27-24. Rams moved to 2-0. Colts are now 0-2. Matt Stafford, 278 yards, 2 touchdowns, 1 interception. Henderson with 53 yards and a touchdown. Sonny Michel got a little bit more active this game, but it seems like they're running a little bit more by committee, but I expect that's mostly because Henderson has been sort of injured. Not really out, but just nagging injuries. But it's they traded for Michel, so seeing him play makes sense. 46 rushing yards for him. Cooper Kupp, unfortunately, for my sorry butt, because I drafted Robert Woods over him, had 163 yards and 2 touchdowns, compared to Robert Woods' 64 receiving yards and no touchdowns. Defensively, Aaron Donald, no sacks, but he gets pressures. Jalen Ramsey with a nice interception there. Moving on to the Colts side of things, Wentz, we see him with 247 yards, touchdown reception. Goes down with an injury. We see Easton step up for 25 yards. Taylor, we have for 51 yards rushing, and then Michael Pittman Jr., 123 yards, 0 touchdowns. Zach Pascal with 38 yards and a touchdown, and then Doyle with 64 yards. Ultimately, this Colts team is really – they're kind of in the same position they were last year. They are a quarterback away from being competitive. Obviously, Carson Wentz has been okay when he's been in, but he's now been injured twice for this Colts team since they signed him, and it's 2 games into his first season with them. So, big concern there. Easton's okay. I don't think he's a starting caliber quarterback in the NFL. Taylor's pretty solid, but isn't getting much going there. Michael Pittman Jr., as I said, I think for the past last year and this year, I love Michael Pittman Jr. I think he's a great guy. He has a YouTube channel. He's really involved with social media. I really love him as a person, but I think he's also a really talented wide receiver. He's like 6'4", 220, fast. His hands can route run, great with the spec catch. I think Michael Pittman Jr. is the future of the wide receiver position for the Colts for some time being. That being said, Zach Pascal is now, I think he's had 3 touchdowns in 2 weeks. Not heavy on the receiving market in terms of how many receptions he's getting. He only had 5, only 38 yards, but he's been productive in the red zone. He's now had 3 touchdowns in 2 games. So waiver wire pickup question mark. Keep an eye on him. If he continues to produce, he might be that guy that goes under the radar that's going to get you touchdowns every week. On the Rams side of things, a little bit of slow of a week for them, but they came out with the win. This Colts team is not horrible. You got to remember that. Matt Stafford was solid. Henderson sort of injured. Cooper Kupp's been going off. I believe he's wide receiver number 1 in the NFL right now. In terms of fantasy, he's at the highest, most points out of PPR of any wide receiver. And then defensively, they're going to do what they do. Rams move to 2-0. Max, what are your comments?
This might seem as a little bit of a hot take, but I'm going to say the Colts coaching has been known to be good and keep them in games. And I feel like this is a great example because the Rams are one of the best teams in the league. But it's also kind of lost them games. And this goes back to last year in the playoff game against the Bills. I remember one of the plays they had, it was 4th and goal. They went for it, didn't get it, and they lost this game by 3 points. That could have tied the game, but they didn't take the points there. And in this game, they had they had 1 4th and goal. They went for it, and Leonard Floyd completely sniffed it out and got Wentz. It wasn't even like he beat one of the tackles. They just got out schemed, and Carson Wentz didn't have a chance. And then one of the plays another play they had down at the goal line where Wentz went out in motion when he got the ball. It seemed like and then he threw a shovel pass and it got intercepted. I couldn't even tell who was to. The nearest guy in the area was Jack Doyle, but it felt like if it just been incomplete, it could have been called for grounding because there were no eligible receivers in the area. I couldn't tell if that was on Wentz, if that was on the coaching or what, but like, I just look at that play and I'm like, what is that? It's, again, another scenario where the Colts are just leaving points on the board and in games that they could have won. And I definitely think Wentz going down kills some momentum because I don't believe in Jacob Eason right now, especially because of the first play he had. The one thing you don't do in the NFL, especially as a rookie quarterback, is you throw to Jalen Ramsey. Guess what he did in this first play? Threw it downfield, Jalen Ramsey, it gets picked off. Total rookie mistake here. He may improve, but it's going to take a lot longer than people are going to want. I definitely don't think they're going to win anything this year because, I mean, it's one play, I know, but if you can make that much of an error on your first NFL throw, like I don't see how any guy can have confidence to throw it on that side of the field. And maybe I'm overreacting there a little bit, but despite that this game was close, I definitely think the Colts are in trouble, especially if Wentz can't stay healthy because he's sprained both his ankles, I believe. So who even knows if he's good to go this Sunday?
And going off of that, I was just reading through some reports. Carson Wentz was not at practice today, which is it's Thursday now. Yeah. I doubt he's going to play this week, to be honest. We'll probably save him for next week. But again, that's 2 injuries now for Carson Wentz, and he's been on the Colts for 2 games. It's not a good ratio, to say the very least. Speaking of injuries, we'll get into another one right here. Next game we have are the Bills and the Dolphins. Bills absolutely demolished the Dolphins 35-0. Both teams are 1-1. Not much to talk about here other than Josh Allen, 179 yards, 2 touchdowns, 1 interception. Not fantastic. Not what you want to see it for Josh Allen. I love Josh Allen. I want to see him at that MVP caliber talent. I think he is, but he's just not playing up to his full potential right now. I think he's going to get there, but he's not there yet. Singletary, 82 yards rushing, 1 touchdown. Receiving wise, Diggs with 60 yards and a touchdown. Sanders 48 yards. I think that Bills offense has a lot to work on moving forward. Tua goes down with another injury yet again. See where he ends up here, but Brissett steps in, 169 yards and an interception. Great to the very least. Gaskin 25 yards rushing on 5 carries, and then Brown with 5 carries and 21 yards. Ahmed also had 6 carries for 17 yards. So Dolphins are running by committee. Especially Gaskin's not getting a lot of touches in the red zone. If you have him on your fantasy team, trade him now. Waddle has 48 yards, and then Parker has 42 yards. Gesicki has 41 yards. No touchdowns. Obviously, there was no points. This Dolphins team, I think at this point, they're regretting picking Tua over Justin Herbert. And that, during the draft, I was totally on board for Tua over Herbert, but I got to admit, I was wrong. I'm sure the Dolphins are saying, damn, we messed up. We should have got Herbert. As much as I love Tua, and I want to see him do well, I think he has the potential to do well. He just has not lived up to it. He's gotten injured twice now. He was injured all in and out last year. You could say it was COVID. He didn't really do well, but Justin Herbert did phenomenal, and he had the same offseason as Tua. So, Tua's just not developing into that player that you wanted to see him become. On the Bills side of things, I think this is more indicative of the Bills team that we expect. I think offensively, they still have some growing to do this season. They're not really where they were last season, and I guess teams are figuring them out a little bit more, but still a lot better performance for the Bills this week. They moved to 1-1. I still expect it to be a fairly solid playoff team. Probably finish the season with 11, 12 wins, if I had to guess, but 35-0 Bills, you can't be upset with that score. But it's, again, the Dolphins are just not playing well right now, so it's really no brainer that the Bills won this game.
Yeah, going back to what you said about the Bills offense, it's what I've been saying for the past week now. You can't win with just Josh Allen and Stephon Diggs. Yes, Singletary has had 2 pretty good games, but you can't really rely on him to be your running back 1. And like I said, just give him more help because a true receiver too could make a big difference for this team, even a tight end, because they don't have any really elite tight end. No one that even comes close to scaring you or even close to elite. Why would I even throw that adjective out there? And for the Dolphins, I mean, you hate to say it's nothing but questions for Tua at this point. I mean, last year we could have excused it because he was a rookie, and you don't know. I mean, he could still come out and be better, but if we're going to talk about the injury issue again, then if you're a Dolphins fan and you were scared last year, what are you thinking now? Like, I mean, yeah, it's way too early to call him a bust, as some people are doing. It's totally ridiculous at this point. But if the injury issues persist, then it's going to look really bad for them. And I really hope the Dolphins don't have to cave and to the Deshaun Watson rumors. I mean, as of right now, I don't see that happening because I don't see the guy getting traded until he's even cleared to play. Mm-hmm. But after this game, there's nothing but questions for this Dolphins team.
100%. So moving on from there, we have Patriots versus the Jets. Patriots win this one 25-6, was not competitive at all. Mac Jones, 186 yards passing with touchdowns, no interceptions. Harris, 62 yards rushing, 1 touchdown. Receiving wise, White was their number 1 receiver, 45 yards. They had Henry with 42 yards on 2 receptions. Nothing spectacular out of the Patriots here. More defensively, it's really they had a fantastic game. So going over the Jets side of things, we had Zach Wilson, no touchdowns, 4 interceptions, 210 yards. Carter was their leading rusher with 59 yards, and then Berrios was their leading receiver with 73 yards. So just that was say about this game, other than we'll go to the Patriots real quick. Definitely want to see more out of the receiving core, specifically Hunter Henry. You know, I'm not really seeing a lot of receiving balance here. And then Mac Jones, he's solid. You know, he's done well so far. No complaints about him. So I have to say, though, so my friends had this little debate. They said, who out of the 3 quarterbacks, in order, who would you pick, right? You have Daniel Jones, Zach Wilson, and Mac Jones. If I had to pick, I'd go Zach Wilson over Mac Jones over Daniel Jones. Daniel Jones is last. My friend Matt, if you listen to this, like, you know, I said this to you. Even though Zach Wilson had 4 interceptions this week, there's this one video that came out that really highlighted the Jets and went viral. You have the Jets offense being ridiculous. You have one free blitzer screaming. I think it's.
I'm looking at the video right now. I was going to bring that up.
Screaming at Zach Wilson and all right, Brian, if you're editing this, make sure to add this in when we do a clip on Instagram.
Yes, definitely.
Add the clip over this. You got the linebacker screaming at Zach Wilson. You got the linebacker screaming at Zach Wilson. You got basically 2 offensive linemen blocking each other on the right side. Then you got, I think, the tight end and the right tackle, I forget who it was, staring at each other like, what are you doing on the right side? On the left side, you got a guy getting beat. And then you look downfield at the receivers, and they're on man-on-man coverage. They're sticky as could be. There's not a single ounce of room.
One, and you got 2 guys that can come over. So it's essentially 1-on-3.
And then out of all that, right, you got the linebacker screaming at Zach Wilson. He throws a pretty solid pass to a receiver, considering the situation. He hits him in the hands. I forgot what receiver it was. I think it might have been Moore. I forget who it was.
I believe it was Elijah Moore.
It was Elijah Moore. It bounces off his hands into whoever I forget picked it off. And it's just like, what more could you add to Zach Wilson? And as we explained before with the Giants, the quarterback's not going to solve your situation. Zach Wilson's going to fall into the same pit of despair that Sam Darnold did if you don't fix this offensive line and fix the rest of the franchise. I think Zach Wilson has potential to be a superstar in this league. I love everything he's put on the table so far. But you can't expect him to be successful if his offensive line can't block for anything, if nobody gets open. And you can't really blame Zach Wilson, just like you couldn't blame Tua, or I forget who played the Patriots last week. It was another rookie quarterback. Played the Patriots last week. Who played the Patriots last week? I can't forget.
It was the Dolphins.
The Dolphins, yeah.
So it was Tua, yes.
Yeah, it was Tua. Tua struggled against the Patriots. Young quarterbacks struggle against the Patriots. Their defense is a lot of hitting coverages. They do things really well. It's a Bill Belichick defense. So I'm not even mad if it was Zach Wilson's fault, because Zach Wilson's a rookie quarterback. You know, it's the Patriots. However, it's worse than that because this franchise is an absolute mess. Zach Wilson cannot win or do well in these circumstances. Max?
Yeah, I really don't even know what to add. You hit it like right on point. It's like what I think that play literally sums up the Jets. Like what more can you expect Zach Wilson to do? Like, yeah, he's going to make his rookie mistakes, but how is he ever going to grow out of those growing pains if you don't give him adequate tools?
100%.
I have nothing more to add.
Nothing more to say there. So moving on from there, we have the Bears and the Bengals. Bears take this one 20-17. This is one of the more contested games last week that Max chose the Bears. I chose the Bengals. I was wrong. So going to the score, 2017, Bengals 1-1, Bears 1-1. Joe Burrow, 2 touchdowns, 3 interceptions, 207 yards. Joe Burrow's been pretty solid so far, but he definitely needs to continue to grow. 3 interceptions against the Bears is not fantastic. Mixon was their only rusher for 69 yards, and then receiving, it's Tyler Boyd with 73 yards. Higgins with 60 and a touchdown. You had Jared Chase with 54 and a touchdown. Ultimately, the Bengals, I don't have much to say about them, so I'm just going to say this. Offensive line needs to be addressed. That's probably their biggest need. And then defensively, they need to fill in spots, but that offensive line, this offense is not going to get going until they fix that offensive line. I think it's pretty clear. I don't think Bengals really have high expectations this season anyway. So going to the Bear side of things, I believe Dalton went down with an injury. Am I correct in saying that?
Yes.
Yeah, so I think Fields is starting next week. So 60 yards for Fields, an interception, touchdown for Danny Dalton, 56 yards. Montgomery, pretty solid week out of him, 61 yards. Mooney with 66 yards, their top receiver. Not a great game out of either team. Roquan Smith had a pick, which was a pretty nice pick. You had Blackson with the pick as well as Johnson with the pick. So, I don't know much to say about this game. Bears were just a better team. They're both not great teams, and I think the Bears just came out on top because they are the better team.
Yeah, this game really showed how bad both teams are because Burrow threw 3 picks on 3 straight plays, not drives, plays. And the Bears, up 23, nearly choked and let him back in at the end of the game. I didn't watch this game that closely, but it just shows what we thought about those two teams in their franchise, in the state of their franchises. It seems like they're 2 of those teams who will always persist in a bad state.
100%. So moving on from there, we have the Buccaneers Falcons. Buccaneers blow out the Falcons, and I say blow out with an asterisk next to it. 48-25. Buccaneers 2-0. Falcons 0-2. Falcons were really competitive in this game up until late. It was kind of a weird game. Matt Ryan 300 yards, 2 touchdowns, 3 interceptions. Davis was 38 yards rushing, and then Kyle Pitts was their leading receiver with 73 yards, and then Calvin Ridley 60 yards and a touchdown. Cordell Patterson 58 yards and a touchdown. Buccaneers. Brady's on fire, to say the least. 276 yards with 5 touchdowns, no interceptions. Leonard Fournette has really taken over the starting role as running back for the Buccaneers with 11 carries, 52 yards. Jones with 27 yards on 6 carries. Receiving wise, Fournette's been getting involved too, and I only knows because he's on my fantasy team. 4 receptions for 24 yards. Mike Evans is their leading receiver for 75 yards, 2 touchdowns. Godwin with 62 yards and a touchdown, and Gronkowski with 39 yards and 2 touchdowns. Going through it real quick, I'll start with the Falcons side of things. Not a horrible game out of them. They blew it late, but they were competitive for a long time. You put in perspective, right? I can't forget. I think they were down. It was either tied going into the 4th quarter, but it was really close. Buccaneers put up 20 unanswered points in the 4th quarter and made this game look like a blowout. That's what it came down to. In ultimate lines, to Buccaneers being a better team, and you have Tom Brady, et cetera, et cetera. Buccaneers are doing well. Notably, Gronkowski has really came back to form. He lost a little bit of weight in the offseason, got into a better shape. He's having one of the better seasons that he's ever had. I think he had 2 touchdowns last week, if I remember correctly. So that'd be 4 touchdowns total for Gronkowski through 2 games, which is insane for a tight end. He's looking like the old Gronk. It's really because he put in the work. So I'm excited. If you're a Gronk owner, you had him on your bench, you got another starting tight end. You might want to look at this point to trade your starting tight end. Filing Gronk and then maybe get some trade value out of him. And then on the Falcons side of thing, again, not much to talk about other than they kept it competitive through the first 3 quarters, and I'd give them credit for that. Kyle Pitts looked good. Calvin Ridley's not really playing up to his ability because he's limited by how limited this Falcons offense is, but you got good talent in Calvin Ridley and Kyle Pitts. It's something to look forward to when you eventually get this franchise rebuilt. They could be competitive against a good team. It's just they lack the talent. Frankly, they lack coaching to really get the job done.
Yeah, I mean, pretty much all I have to say about this game is we knew the Buccaneers would win because they're just that much better. But it seems like we're just talking about Brady just continues to defy all logic, all expectations, and this term has probably been used in excess, but he seems like he's just aging in reverse. I don't know how it happened.
9 touchdowns in 2 games. That's insane.
Unbelievable.
Wouldn't be surprised. I think he's on pace to break the touchdown record, given they have an extra game this year. So
what if he might do
it.
MVP in his at 44?
That'd be nuts. With that being said, moving on from there, Vikings and Cardinals. I think this is where we have a real MVP here. As I said it last week, I'm sticking to it this week. Had another fantastic game. Vikings Cardinals. Cardinals win at 34-33. the best fashion, but they won the game. Cardinals 2-0, Vikings 0-2. Ultimately, Vikings are not living up to where they should be. They have too much talent, especially on offense, to lose games. Vikings struggled to find a kicker because the kicker misses the game-winning field goal. Kirk Cousins played well, 244 yards, 3 touchdowns, no interceptions. Dalvin Cook played well, 131 yards rushing. Receiving-wise, not great. Adam Thielen, 39 yards and a touchdown. Justin Jefferson, 65 yards and a touchdown. And Osborne step up for 91 yards and a touchdown. Ultimately, it just comes down to the fact that the Vikings could not find a kicker, and their defense was pretty not great here. They got cooked up by my future MVP pick. I'm sticking with it. Kyler Murray, 400 yards, 3 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. Not great, but Kyler Murray has just been fantastic this season. I think he's taken that step up to the elite quarterback that he is going to be. I think he's taking that Josh Allen type jump this year. He's looking fantastic, even though I wasn't happy with the 2 picks, but 400 yards, 3 touchdowns. Can't argue those numbers. Edmonds with 46 yards rushing. And then we only had James Conner with 26 yards rushing. So I think ultimately the rushing game is going to need a little bit more work, but going over the receiving type of side of things, 114 yards and a touchdown for Moore. Kirk is with another solid game here, 65 yards, 3 receptions. DeAndre Hopkins is kind of limited here to 4 receptions, 54 yards and a touchdown. AJ Green also had a touchdown with 44 yards. I love this Cardinals defense. They weren't great this week, but I think this Cardinals team is one of those teams that's going to be one of the ones to beat going into the playoffs. I just love how Kyler Murray's playing. I think he's playing out of his mind. Not perfect. He's still, I think he has some room to growing to be Mahomes or Josh Allen level quarterback, but I think Kyler Murray is playing on an MVP level this year. I suspect he's going to win MVP when it's all said and done. Max?
The thing about the Cardinals is we know, like I said before, we know what they can be. They started out this way last year, but they just have to keep consistency, right? I mean, I definitely do think Kyler is starting even better than he started last year. Just watching some of the plays he makes. I don't know how. There was one play he made. It was a 4th down, completely on his back, and then throws it, but he throws a perfect pass to Christian Kirk. I just don't know how you do that. That's really it. And I mean, right now he's definitely trending toward one of the MVP favorites. And I really think that if he can sustain the success, that would put him for sure into the top 5. Because I had him there all through last year, almost until the very end when he fell apart. So that's really all I have to say there. And for the Vikings, this team continues to find unbelievable ways to lose games. Last week, Dalvin Cook fumble, losing the game-winning field goal. This week, miss yet another game-winning field goal.
The Vikings are cursed.
They are cursed. Just the pain of being a Vikings fan, I just couldn't imagine.
The Minneapolis Miracle, as well as the missed kick against it was the Eagles, the Bears. I can't even remember now.
Well, the one that comes to mind immediately for me is the Blair Walsh 27 yarder.
Yeah, it's just they cannot find a kicker to kick for anything, and
they just can't find a way to win ever.
So moving on from there, Titans Seahawks. Titans pulled this one out as I suspected, 33-30. Ryan Tannehill, 347 yards, no touchdowns, no interceptions. Back to Derrick Henry, 182 yards on 35 carries for 3 touchdowns. What a monster. Julio Jones looking like Julio Jones, 128 yards. Derrick Henry for 55 yards, also receiving. A.J. Brown, not a great
dropped a lot of passes.
He dropped a lot of passes, and I think it's only a matter of time before
he tweeted after the game.
Well, we'll get to that in a second. Because I'm going to let you talk all about this game. A.J. Brown, I think, is going to step up when he starts making his receptions. I think he's the number 1 targeted receiver in the NFL right now. He just has so many drops that it's hurting him, but it's A.J. Brown. He'll pick it up. And then the Seahawks side of things, Russell Wilson, 343 yards, 2 touchdowns, no interceptions. Chris Carson, 31 yards, rushing, 2 touchdowns. Tyler Lockett, 178 yards, 1 touchdown. DK Metcalf held to 53 yards. Just want to talk a little bit about the Seahawks. Still a really solid team. They're 1-1. I think Titans are a better team than the Seahawks at this point in the season. If you have Tyler Lockett, trade him now. His trade value is higher than anything here. He had 178 yards and a touchdown. If you have Tyler Lockett, trade him now. There's no way he sustains that. A, Tyler Lockett gets injured from time to time. B, they have DK Metcalf. And eventually, if Tyler Lockett continues to do good, they're going to rely more heavily on DK Metcalf. Trade Tyler Lockett while he has such a high trade value right now. Get a lot out of him. That's what I would suggest. Going from there, going over to the Titans, wow, that Derrick Henry's Derrick Henry. And as I said, A.J. Brown's going to bounce back. I'll let Max take it over.
Where do I even begin with this game? This was just an unbelievable affair. Starting on the offense, we know what they are. Derrick Henry, as well as much time as he usually takes to pick it up as the year goes on, I think he's going to have a few more iffy games from here on out because he's usually not himself early on. But man, did he turn it on when he needed to? He had really the 60-yard run he had in the fourth quarter, I think was a turning point because we were down 30-16 at that point. But then I think that really started to swing the momentum in our favor. On defense, one player I'm really, really high on right now is Christian Fulton. I did not expect Mike Vrabel and Shane Bone to put him in coverage against DK Metcalf. Not only did he play in coverage, he played well. And it was great to see in the second quarter, I believe they were getting into it. And DK was the one who's getting the penalties for being undisciplined. And that's just something you love to see for a guy that inexperienced to get into the head of a guy DK's not a veteran at this point. It's only his third year, but a guy who's that established, you wouldn't expect that to happen. I mean, even besides that, he's so technically sound. I think he has a great future in this league. And I'm really shocked to see how well he's playing so early. When it comes down to it, this game was the quintessential Titans game. Go down early in the game. It doesn't look that great, but then come back on a game-winning drive in improbable fashion. I believe this was the first time the Seahawks had lost on home field after being up 15. I think maybe, I don't know about ever, but I think they were 52-1 now or something like that. As crazy as a game like this is, and we love to see how the Titans can come back from these deficits, you can't keep trying to win games like this because against better teams, you're not going to be able to mount those comebacks. I mean, the Seahawks are still a good team, but sooner or later, that's going to catch up to you. And I definitely think that the issues that led to this are fixable. For example, Elijah Molden got burned a lot in coverage. I think he's going to grow with experience. Hopefully that happens this year. But right now, he's been getting burned a good bit, especially he got burned twice by Lockett, him and Bradley McDougall, who got released. And on the last touchdown of the game, it was a touchdown to Freddie Swain. Something happened in the coverage. It was a complete breakdown. It looked like it was a miscommunication, but he got completely free. And that's kind of the stuff that led to our the demise of our defense last year. But I do think they're in the right direction because two areas of the defense, the pass rush, they have 5 sacks in 2 games. That's not a lot, but keep in mind this Titans team had 19 last year, 19 total sacks last year. They're up to 5 through 2 games. And on top of that, they were 8 for 12 on third down defense, one of which was a Chris Carson run that was a yard short. I don't know how that got messed up, but they gave him a first down for no reason. And another third down was the touchdown to Freddie Swain. I mean, let's get to one thing right. Getting up 30 points a game, and especially playing the overall defense that the Titans played, is not going to win games. Or, it's not going to win championships. But for a team that suffered so much turnover in the offseason, they're taking those right steps. And I believe that eventually the results will indicate it. So, maybe you could definitely say that I'm biased as a fan, but just going off comparisons to last year, it's already looking better. So that's at this point, that's really all I'm going to ask for, because we know, contrary to what week 1 showed us, that offense is going to be elite. And AJ Brown, like I told you, AJ Brown tweeted after the game, someone from my family told me I couldn't have caught COVID today if I tried. So he clearly knows he had a bad game. He'll be okay. Julio, as old as he is, he's still a game changer. Mm-hmm. This offense is going to be elite, but this defense, even if they improve, they don't have to be great or even that good. If they're decent or capable, this team could do a lot better than people expect.
100%. So moving on from there, we have the Cowboys and the Chargers. Cowboys won in 2017. Cowboys 1-1. Chargers 1-1. Going through the game, unfortunately, I did not have to catch it, but if you guys remember last week, this is definitely a game you needed to watch, and it really turned out to that. I've heard nothing but fantastic things about this game. Dak Prescott, 237 yards, 1 reception. Pollard with 109 yards and a touchdown. Ezekiel Elliott, 71 yards and a touchdown. I'm just not a believer in Zeke at this point. Moving on from there, CeeDee Lamb, 81 yards receiving. This is highlighted the receiving core right there. Where is Amari? But Justin Herbert, 1 touchdown, 2 interceptions, 338 yards. Austin Eckler, 54 yards rushing. Receiving 108 yards for Keenan Allen, and then Mike Williams steps up for 91 yards and a touchdown. This game was a battle of two great games. I think both of them are playoff teams. So I'm going to say this now with how this game turned out. I think Cowboys are going to win the division for the NFC East, and Chargers are going to make the playoffs as well. It's both really good teams. So the battle of good teams here. I've heard nothing but great things about this game. That's all I can really say about it. Max?
I didn't really watch that close either because I was so locked in on the Titans. So it seemed fairly uneventful, but who knows, really?
I've heard great things about this game, how it was really competitive all the way through. Ultimately, I think it really stands as a test that both these teams are really good, and it could have been anybody's game. The Cowboys came out on top. But again, I think both are playoff teams. So saving time, trying to move on. Chiefs, Ravens. Ravens pick up this game 36-35. I would have never believed it if you told me that going into this game. Wow. Ultimately, Baltimore, Chiefs really blew it, especially in the fourth quarter, if you ask me. Put up 12 unanswered points for Baltimore. But going into the stats, Mahomes, 343 yards, 3 touchdowns, interception. Hilaire with 46 yards rushing. Travis Kelce with 109 yards with a touchdown. Pringle with 63 yards and 1 touchdown. Tyreek Hill with only 14 yards receiving, which painful for me as a Hill owner, rather. Going to the Ravens side of things, Lamar Jackson, 239 yards, 1 touchdown, 2 interceptions. They also had 107 yards on the ground for 2 touchdowns. Williams had 77 yards rushing for them. Receiving, rookies Brown, Hollywood stepped up for 113 yards and 1 touchdown receiving. Andrews had 57 yards receiving. Ultimately, this game was a back and forth battle. The Chiefs really took the game going into the second, third quarters. They took a little bit of a lead. And then ultimately, they blew it in the fourth quarter. Lamar Jackson turned on what Lamar Jackson could do. This is the first time, I think, in forever since the Ravens did not have home field advantage statistically. They weren't their favorite team at their home field. And that proves why they should be. The Ravens win at home. It's pretty consistent throughout every single year. The Ravens win at home. They did it here. I don't know what to say other than the Ravens are better than we give them credit for. Their defense is really good. They're, I say, a top 5, top 10 defense, somewhere in that range in the NFL. Offensively, they can get it done. Lamar Jackson is that special. Stop doubting him. I think it's time everyone stops doubting him. It's Lamar Jackson. He's an elite quarterback in this league. Enough of the doubts. He beat the Chiefs, and that in itself is a feat. They lost twice last year. They already have 1 loss in the season through 2 games. Let's say the Chiefs lose twice this year. The Ravens were one of the teams they lost to. That's a feat in itself. Max?
I think a lot of this game comes down to John Harbaugh. And one thing we underestimated early in the preseason, or really after the Ravens went down with all those injuries, is John Harbaugh is a great head coach, and he's going to put his team in position to win. And it's even as simple as trusting your own quarterback. And there's no better example of that than on their final play that they ran before they took kneel downs. It was 4th down, and John Harbaugh literally asked Lamar, "Do you want to go for it?" And we can assume that means, oh, you're going for it because Lamar is going to want to go for it. But you can bet right there, if the Chiefs get that ball back, no matter where they are on the field, the Ravens are going to lose that game because all they need is a field goal, and they have Harrison Butker, who's one of the best kickers in the game. To put trust in your quarterback when it's warranted, and hats off to the Ravens. I never would have thought they'd be able to win this, but they did, and I think it was a great team effort, especially on offense, sticking to their strengths, emphasizing the ground game, and yeah, that's really all I have to say there.
One thing I want to say before we move on is I think Patrick Queen does not get enough credit that he deserves. He's a really good linebacker since he's came to the league coming out of LSU. He's been really good. Was Patrick Queen? I forget where Patrick Queen come out of. He come out of LSU? LSU, yeah. Thank you.
Jason Away also had a pretty good game.
Yes. I just don't think that they get enough credit. But that being said, great job by the Ravens. I'll see where they go from here. They could potentially be a playoff team. They could win that wild card. It's not impossible. After a game like that really shakes up the division. Are the Browns going to solidify their division, or
I still think they will.
Yeah, I think they do, but can't argue with the Ravens win there. Final game of the week. Not much to talk about here. Lions are a bad team. They're going to beat bottom 5 team in the NFL this year, without a doubt. Jared Goff, who was clearly not as good quarterback out of the Rams trade, 246 yards, 2 touchdowns, 1 interception. Also had 46 yards rushing. DeAndre Swift, where are you? 37 yards rushing. Receiving wise, Hawkinson led them with 66 yards and a touchdown. Cephas also had 60 yards and a touchdown. And then Swift also had 41 yards receiving. Packers, a lot better this week. Aaron Rodgers looking like he normally does. 255 yards, 4 touchdowns. Aaron Jones had 67 yards and a touchdown. A.J. Dillon, 18 yards rushing. And then Devontae Adams had 121 yards receiving, as well as Tonyan had 52 yards and a touchdown. Also, Aaron Jones, 3 touchdowns receiving. Can't ignore that. So Aaron Jones stepping into the role that he typically plays, a little bit more on the receiving side, but he wasn't very active just for week 1. Week 2, we get more to what he's worth. A.J. Dillon, it's pretty good backup. Didn't really get overly involved here. But Aaron Rodgers is looking solid. It's how he normally looks. I'd say week 1 was a fluke for the Packers. A lot more to prove. They did win this game by 18 points, so solid margin. Wouldn't say they're completely back to what they were last year, but this is step 1 in getting there. Week 1 might have been a fluke. Max?
Yeah, there were a lot of people who potentially overreacted to the Packers week 1 loss, including myself. But if this game's any indication, they'll probably be okay. I mean, that offense, maybe they just had to take a week to get back into the swing of things, but they took over. And it's weird that this game was close in the first half, and I was really starting to get worried there because the Packers defense in the first half did not look good at all. And losing Darius Smith definitely hurts them because he wasn't playing and he's going to be out for a while. But I really don't have a ton to say because we knew. I mean, Aaron had a really good game, and there was one throw I remember he made to Robert Tonyan. It was a touchdown throw, just made to such a tight window. I mean, that's the Aaron Rodgers we know and love. So hopefully for their sake, he'll get a play like that and put week 1 behind him.
100%. And with that being said, that pretty much wraps up our recap of the week. And we're going to get to our favorite segment, or at least Max's favorite segment that I'm doing, the lightning round of picks. So if you guys are ready, welcome to our lightning round of picks for the week. Here we go. Week 3, we're going to pick. We got the Panthers, Texans. I think Panthers take this one by a margin. Panthers will be 3-0. Max?
Yep, Panthers. You gotta win, especially with Davis Mills starting. That's a definite downgrade at quarterback there. Don't play down to a team that you're clearly better than.
Yep, Chiefs, Chargers. I'm taking the Chiefs by a pretty solid margin. Chargers still a great team, but Chiefs got it.
Chiefs not losing 2 in a row, especially when that second game's at home.
Cardinals versus Jaguars. I'm taking Cardinals. Cardinals move to 3-0.
Yeah.
Bears, Browns. I'm taking the Browns. Browns.
I can see if the past 2 games are any indication, that could be a little closer, but I especially think with Justin Fields starting, it's going to take a little bit of time. Browns are definitely the better team. I don't think the Bears are going to last.
Bills, Washington. I'm taking the Bills. They're making their way back. Titans, Colts. Got to take the Titans here. 100%.
We don't win this game this week, especially against if Jacob Eason's one starting. Either whoever's starting at quarterback for them, their
division rival
is not going to be in an ideal spot.
Yep, division rival without their starting quarterback. You got to win that game. Saints, Patriots. I'm taking the Patriots. Saints are kind of up and down in the mess right now.
Toss-up, but I definitely think the Saints showed more of their true colors last week on the road against Bill Belichick. I think they're going to keep them in check.
Yep, Giants, Falcons. By the love of God, Giants win this game. I'm picking the Giants.
I'm picking the Falcons.
No.
I really don't believe in the Giants.
God, if the Giants are going to win a game this season, this is the one they got to win.
It's got to be this.
It's got to be this one. Bengals, Steelers. I'm going with the Steelers here.
Yeah, I'm going to go Steelers. I still think they're better than the Bengals.
Close game, but I'm going with the Steelers. Ravens, Lions. Ravens, easy choice, especially after last week. They're going to ride that high. Jets, Broncos. I'm taking the Broncos. Broncos move to 3-0. Dolphins, Raiders. I'm taking the Raiders. Raiders move to 3-0.
I thought about picking the Dolphins here because I feel like this is one of those games that the Raiders could lose. Because a lot of their games last year were playing down to worse teams, especially no Tua for the Dolphins. I think that was really the key for me to pick the Raiders in this one.
You got my game of the week right here. Buccaneers, Rams. I'm definitely going with the Buccaneers this week.
I'm going to go with the Rams. I think Stafford gets it done. I believe in this team.
That's going to be the game of the week right there. I just think the Rams had a close one against the Colts. I think the Buccaneers are a better team. I got to go with the Buccaneers here. Moving on from there, we have the Seahawks, Vikings. I'm taking the Seahawks. Vikings are a mess. They will go with 3. Yeah. Packers, 49ers. It's going to be a good one. I'm going to ride with the 49ers. The Packers came back.
49ers as well. I think that like I said, I think they tend to start a little slow, but I think against a really good team in prime time, they're going to show what they can do. It was really 2019 that I'm really comparing the season to because I remember I picked a lot of games for them where I thought, the 49ers haven't been playing that well, but any game that was a big game for them, they had to win to prove themselves. They won. I think they're going to do it this game.
And then final game of the week, Cowboys, Eagles. You got to pick the Cowboys here, not the Eagles. Got to pick the Cowboys.
Yep.
Cowboys here. So that wraps up every game of the week. Thank you guys for participating in our lightning round. If you guys have any comments, questions, leave them down below. If you guys disagree with us in any of our picks, with that being said, that pretty much wraps up our podcast for the week. Max, do you have any final words?
Not really.
All right. Other than that, thank you guys for watching. It was a really fun week. We're going to keep working on making things better and better. I'm really loving the podcast and how it's shaping out so far. I think we have a lot of energy on this podcast right now. I think our segments are really good. We're not staying too long on one team. If you guys have any suggestions, comments, whatever you guys want to see, and maybe an extra segment, maybe pull back a little bit on maybe statistics, whatever it might be, feel free to leave them in the comments below. Other than that, thank you guys for watching. See you guys next week.
Yeah.
Thank you.